This May 2020 graduation moment reflects years of friendship and shared memories. But now, these young ladies are realizing as much as they celebrate all that they have in common, they shouldn't ignore what makes them unique. No one knows that better than 17-year-old Cece Jones.
I've always gone to predominantly white schools. I always grew up learning that you don't make friends based on their race or anything. I never judge anybody based on what color they are, what they look like or anything. I base them on their personality. But it's always good to communicate the differences we have between each other so we know and learn from each other.
The lessons are happening fast and unfiltered as the teens and the rest of the world watch raw history unfold on social media.
Videos of people at protests and, firsthand police brutality, and you're seeing it right in front of your face.
I knew that Cece had different things to worry about, but now that everything is brought to light, it makes you actually look at how different it actually is to be a different skin color than white and living in America.
In 6th grade, Cece was called the N-word. Then, as she got into high school, she had to explain to her friends her truth.
Some things that I can't do, I don't want them to feel sad about it, but it's just because how the world is set up that I can't do those things and they will get away with things like that.
Like what?
Sometimes I know people OMG, I don't want the police to pull me over, but for me it's a fear of my life. For them it's maybe if they'll get a ticket or not.
We exude and want people to demonstrate this notion of sameness. And we're not all the same.
Danielle Paget is a Wayne State Associate Professor in Communications and consults companies on diversity and inclusion. She's also a mother to 3 sons, and she'll never forget the words her middle school son told her years ago.
My generation is different than your generation, Mom. We don't see color. And I thought, wow, what a kind of world where you don't see color. Because what that does is, for the person who is a person of color, it means you don't see me.
In fact, for some, not seeing color means not seeing the cruel reality of racial injustice.
It's a lack of recognition of history. It's a lack of lived experience, not understanding what it's like to be another person. And if we're honest, apathy.
But now, in many places, that apathy has been replaced with passion.
And the protester pointed to the sea of white, brown, and black faces and said, this is what's next. And I think for a lot of the protests, they haven't just been about chanting and marching, but for many of them, they've been about people breaking bread together, people talking and listening and talking. And I think that's what's next.
As for these young ladies, they will keep sharing stories like they share clothes as they want to make a difference together.
A lot of the adults have grown up and raised with certain views, which obviously people can change them, but with social media in our generation, I really think it's going to be us that changes the ways.
My friends are always conscious and aware, and they treat me like I'm anybody else.
Cece is the smiling cheerleader, but underneath that smile, there's uncertainty.
Do you feel that when you have kids, are you going to have that same conversation?
I hope I don't have to, but I'm pretty sure I might have to.
When we look at policing and law enforcement, when we look at the justice system, and most recently we've had to look at health disparities and disparities in education just because of the pandemic. But we've got to realize that these are systems that were designed to privilege some while marginalizing others. That's a reality that we can't move forward until we face that.
Good job, Dina.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Photographer Todd and, of course, my buddy Mike Moore editing that. It's hard because everybody working remotely, so it's hard to put these stories that are meaningful and that you really want to work on together. So I appreciate those guys helping me. But I was so interested in this story because at a very grassroots level, guys, and Elle, you know my daughter, they just want things to change. So there's that level of change where what do we do to make it better? And then there's a very intellectual, what Dr. Paget level of change, a policy change that needs to happen. So we're talking about a huge spectrum, but I felt like it was all represented.
Yeah, I was really touched by that story. I think you touched a lot, especially of the middle class families in Black America, because that's my story. That's how I grew up. The only Black cheerleader, until I went to college, because I went to a historically Black college. I would say to that, I am so encouraged by how much diversity we're seeing out there, the folks who are protesting. And I would also say, don't get tired. To our friends, our new allies who are eager to participate because they didn't realize this was happening,